The project will continue as planned. The man at the center of the heated debate over building a mosque and community center near Ground Zero finally breaks his silence. Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf is laying down his argument and making promises.
In fact, this has been...
When I interviewed him in May, Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf was adamant the so-called Ground Zero Mosque was about healing, not division.
To bring about a new discourse in the relationship between the United States, New York City, and the Muslim world.
And in today's New York Times, he reiterated that claim, saying if they back down now and build the center somewhere else, the enemies of freedom and America's principles will win. We cede the discourse, he wrote, and essentially our future to radicals on both sides. It's interesting to note that nowhere in his editorial did the imam use the word mosque. Instead, he insisted that this was going to be a community center, complete with a swimming pool, a children's play area, and places for worship for people of all faiths. He adds the center will also include a multi-faith memorial dedicated to victims of the September 11th attacks.
Not here!
But for those who oppose the project, that's just not enough.
I'm outraged by his article. I think he's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
I found the imam's op-ed to be very arrogant. Basically, he said he's going to build here no matter what.
To try to counter the emotional issue this has become, rife with suspicion, the imam even offered to fully disclose the sources of funding for the project. Is there anything that they can say to assure the public that there's nothing nefarious behind this?
I think they've said all that is necessary. I think that there's some people in the public who are never going to believe anything.
To be fair, many of those who object to the project say they're not anti-Muslim. They just think the Cordoba initiative is being insensitive to what happened here 9 years ago this weekend. The recent polls show most people are against building the Mosque and Cultural Center at its present location. The emotional issue is sparking something new this September 11th, more protests instead of just memorial ceremonies.
In other developments, a new push to give 9/11 heroes the health care they need 9 years later.
Now, the bill was killed in an ugly partisan battle on Capitol Hill over the summer, but it is about to make a big comeback.
And as Fox 5's Linda Schmidt explains, it's news now that more than 20,000 first responders have been waiting for.
Well, we are just 3 days away from the 9th anniversary of 9/11, and first responders and others who got sick from working down here at Ground Zero, they are still fighting for health coverage. Now, the bill that failed for them back in July is coming up for another vote later this month.
You just need a majority vote. 218 votes to pass it, and we have those votes.
And Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney says the bill to provide health coverage to those sickened at Ground Zero will come up for another vote the week of September 20th. Now, the House failed back in July to pass the James Zadroga Health Act, and that sparked passionate debate between Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner and Republican Peter King, both of New York.
You vote in favor of something if you believe it's the right thing. If you believe it's the wrong thing, you vote no. We are following a procedure. I will not yield to the gentleman, and the gentleman will observe regular order. The gentleman will observe regular order.
Republicans had tried to pad the bill with additional amendments. Weiner and King then blamed one another for the bill's failure.
Instead of fighting with each other, we're going to be fighting with others in Congress and with everyone to make sure this bill passes. We are working as one. This is a united team. What happened in the past happened. That's part of New York.
What we both agree on today is all of us, and not only in the New York delegation, but in both sides of the aisle, need to work to get this thing passed. We're absolutely committed to getting that done.
And many of those who got sick from breathing the toxic dust are praying that the government doesn't abandon them.
We demand our bill after 9 years. It's hard to digest.
Despicable. It really is. It just shows the politics that's in Congress.
So what happens now? Well, the first responders and others who got sick down here at Ground Zero, they will be traveling to Washington, D.C. next Wednesday, and they plan to rally on the White House lawn. In Lower Manhattan, I'm Linda Schmidt, Fox 5 News.
News now. Do you consider yourself to be middle class? The president hit the road today talking about taxes and defending a plan that will mean a smaller paycheck for people who aren't exactly rich. CBS 2 political reporter Marsha Kramer explains how that plan could hit the tri-state area very hard.
With the November elections approaching and fear of possible Democratic losses, President Obama gave an impassioned speech today about providing permanent tax cuts for the middle class.
We should not hold middle class tax cuts hostage any longer.
The president wants low and middle-class families to keep the so-called Bush tax cuts, but he wants taxes to go up for individuals making more than $200,000 and two-earner married couples making more than $250,000. But the plan will dramatically affect people living in the metropolitan area where wages are higher because the cost of living is higher. The Obama plan means an extra $2,100 in taxes for the family here making $250,000, an extra $4,441 for a family at the $300,000 level, and $7,388 in extra taxes for those making $500,000. And if you make $1 million, your tax bill goes up $51,389. Members of the president's own party say he's dead wrong and needs to dramatically increase his definition of middle class before he sends IRS agents knocking.
$250,000 sounds like a lot of money, but for a couple of working households in New York, before taxes, that's not exactly rich. I think it should be higher, maybe something in the magnitude of $1 million, and that still gives plenty of money.
I've introduced legislation to vary income tax brackets according to the cost of living in the locality to make things more fair.
Republican Congressman Peter King says President Obama's idea is terrible for our area.
It's going to hurt investment. It's going to cut back on jobs. It's going to hurt sales tax revenues here in the state. It's absolutely devastating.
The idea of raising taxes on anybody is a rather horrifying prospect in this kind of an economy.
Part of the country is just they don't have a job and they're going down the tubes, and so now he's just taking money from those who have. It's a ridiculous way to do things.
I understand it, and I support him, but I'm not sure about that because I'm thinking about how it's going to affect my family.
What's clear about the president's tax plan is that there will be a big debate in Washington. What's unclear is whether he can get the votes to pass it. In Manhattan, I'm Marcia Kramer, CBS 2 News.
The president also wants tax breaks to let businesses write off 100% of spending on new investments and equipment during all of next year.